In Bolivia, citizens took to the streets on Friday to demand justice for the victims of the 2019 coup carried out against former President Evo Morales. Uruguayan government authorities reported the highest ever daily number of new COVID-19 cases since the beginning of the pandemic on Thursday. This Friday, Samia Suluhu Hassan was sworn in as Tanzania's president to become the first woman to hold the post in the country. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. In Bolivia, citizens took to the streets on Friday to demand justice for the victims of the 2019 coup carried out against former President Evo Morales. Several social movements gathered in Morillo Square in the city of La Paz to demand that state institutions ensure justice in the face of the violent events that occurred during the takeover by the de facto government and the 11 months that followed, which saw the deaths of over 30 Bolivians. Former political prisoners also participated in the mobilizations, who denounced having suffered torture and various violations of their rights by the police. Ecuador's National Electoral Council is preparing contingency plans in the face of possible climate emergencies ahead of the second round of the presidential election to be held on April 11th. Officials of the electoral body continue to tour different voting districts to ensure that everything is in place for the April ballot. In several provinces, polling stations have been affected by floods and landslides as a consequence of heavy rainfall. Electoral authorities said they expect to have everything ready in time in order to facilitate citizen access to voting sites and guarantee the best conditions for the day, when Ecuadorians will choose their next president and vice president. Peru's Congress has rejected a bill that declared the production and distribution of medical oxygen as a public service. The bill, presented by the Broad Front Coalition, received 10 votes in favour and 80 against. The initiative proposed to allow the Ministry of Health to make use of facilities for oxygen production, storage and distribution in the areas hardest hit by the pandemic, and to put these supplies at the service of the national health system. According to figures from Johns Hopkins University, the country has reported over 1.4 million COVID-19 cases and more than 49,000 deaths. In Uruguay, former political prisoners who suffered sexual abuse during the military dictatorship of 1973 to 1985 have presented their case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. 28 women filed a criminal complaint in the country 10 years ago, but with few developments in that case, they decided to approach the regional body. Their complaint targets more than 100 regime officials, doctors, psychologists and security forces members, none of whom have been convicted of any crimes to date. According to Maria Leone of the Center for Justice and International Law, sexual violence was a weapon of war used by the state to humiliate and punish political prisoners. Torture, killings, enforced disappearance and other human rights violations were committed during the nearly 12-year dictatorship imposed after the coup of 1973.
We denounce more than 100 people, officers, doctors, psychologists, troop personnel, and only one of them was prosecuted not for torture and sexual violence, which he confessed within the framework of the process, but for repeated crimes of deprivation of liberty. According to civil society, more than 70% of the approximately 200 open cases are in the initial stages of investigation, including this case. There have been convictions in only 14 trials against 30 people, and there are unprocessed complaints against more than 60 accused.
The Caribbean island of Curacao is holding parliamentary elections this Friday. In accordance with the usual procedure, Prime Minister Eugene Rugenanath submitted his resignation to the governor of the country on behalf of his cabinet on Thursday afternoon. The vote comes amid political tensions between the ruling coalition formed by the Real Alternative Party and the MAN Party and two opposition parties. Polls conducted earlier this month show the current governing coalition is likely to lose seats and its right to form a government. Leading the polls are the centre-right Movement for the Future of Curacao Party and the Christian Democratic National People's Party. However, a Kenneth Centrum Research Institute survey shows that 38% of voters are unwilling to reveal who they will vote for, leaving election day outcomes uncertain. And this Friday's elections take place in special circumstances. The island has seen a significant increase in the number of COVID-19 infections in recent days, mainly due to the variant first detected in the United Kingdom. Voters are advised to keep a face mask on at all times, avoid gatherings and return home immediately after voting. Party rallies and parades as political leaders go to vote are banned. Proxy voting is not allowed. There are 117 polling stations across the country for more than 116,000 voters. Polling stations opened at 8 a.m. local time and will close at 7 p.m. A curfew is set to start 2 hours after the polls close. And as voting continues in Curaçao's parliamentary elections, several candidates have already cast their votes. The leaders of the Progressive Movement, Real Alternative, KEM, Work for Curaçao and Sovereign People parties have all gone to the polls. The political leaders arrived at the polling stations surrounded by supporters and in car caravans, despite a ban on such activities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Uruguayan government authorities reported the highest ever daily number of new COVID-19 cases since the beginning of the pandemic on Thursday. The Medical Union of Uruguay informed that a record total of 1,698 new cases were registered on Thursday, bringing the total number of infections to over 11,500. 9 COVID-19 related fatalities have also been recorded during the past day, bringing the total number of deaths in the first year of the pandemic to 749. In this sense, union members reiterated the need to strengthen social distancing measures in order to reduce the number of cases, avoid more deaths and prevent the collapse of the country's health system. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador expressed thanks to his US counterpart Joe Biden on Friday for the decision to send 2.7 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to the country. The president added that with the shipment of vaccines from the United States, plus those that have arrived from Russia, China and the Pfizer lab, his government is making progress in a national vaccination plan. The White House said it planned to ship millions of doses of AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine to Mexico and Canada. The shot has already been approved in both countries, but is awaiting the green light from the US Food and Drug Administration. To date, Mexico has received over 7 million vaccine doses of different brands, of which it's administered over 4.7 million. In 3 months, Mexico has received almost 7 million COVID-19 vaccine doses. The first have been administered to health workers and the elderly in 330 municipalities of the country, including 8 in the capital. We have more details with our correspondent Eduardo Martinez.
Elderly people from the Venustiano Carranza municipality in the center of Mexico City were the first to receive the vaccine produced by Chinese biotech company Sinovac.
This vaccine has the advantage that it can be kept at temperatures from 2 to 8 degrees, unlike the Pfizer vaccine that needs to be kept at extremely cold temperatures, or all the vaccines that need to be applied very quickly, because the period of time between defrost and the administering to patient has to be very short.
In this area of the capital, more than 91,000 doses of the Chinese vaccine will be distributed, which offers advantages over other vaccines from other countries. For example, just 1 dose is included in each vial.
It helps us to have more efficient handling of the vaccines, because every time we are faced with a multi-dose vial, we can end up with wastage. Here we have the exact amount and there is no waste of the vaccine.
Those who have been vaccinated are confident that they will resume their regular activities soon, or simply be able to see their loved ones. Such is the case of Cristina and her husband Julio, who have been isolated for a year to avoid contagion.
We still need the second dose, but we hope that after 15 days we will have sufficient protection that it won't be so bad if we are infected.
We've met with family or visited our friends. Our family unit has been produced to just the 2 of us here at home.
The Mexican government seeks to accelerate the national vaccination plan against COVID-19 with the arrival of vaccines developed in China. Sinovac has shipped 1 million of the 22 million units purchased by the Mexican authorities.
These million doses that began to be distributed today and which will be finished by tomorrow will provide us with a new daily increase in the number of vaccinations.
Up until March 16th, Mexico has reported more than 1.2 million cases of COVID-19 and over 195,000 deaths linked to the disease. The possibility of access to different vaccine options has generated great expectation among the population.
I have heard these vaccines have great potential. I've heard good things, but I am also cautious. I heard there are Chinese vaccines coming and they give me hope and confidence to apply to be immunized.
The Federal Committee for Protection Against Health Risks has authorized the emergency use of the Sinovac and also Sinopharm vaccines, who will be sending 12 million doses in the next few days. Meanwhile, CanSino Bio, which performed a phase 3 clinical trial in Mexico, has already begun packaging the first 3 million doses that will be applied to the population at the end of March.
Cuba's Center for State Control of Medicines, Equipment and Medical Devices announced on Thursday the approval of phase 3 clinical trials for the Abdala COVID-19 vaccine candidate. According to the regulatory body, the trials will take place in 18 health areas in the eastern provinces of Guantanamo, Santiago de Cuba and Granma. The study will begin in the next few days and see the participation of 48,000 volunteers between 19 and 80 years of age. This is the second Cuban vaccine candidate to enter phase 3 trials after the approval granted to the Soberana 02 candidate. And the Cuban government announced that a new contingent of Cuban medical personnel from the Henry Reeve Brigade left for Qatar to join the fight against the pandemic. A group of 57 brigade members are headed for the Arab country as part of the ongoing international cooperation efforts agreed with the government of Qatar. The contingent of Cuban medical personnel is made up of internists, epidemiologists and biotechnologists and will join the efforts being carried out in the country to break the chain of infection and reduce the number of COVID-19 deaths. German Chancellor Angela Merkel stated on Friday that she was ready to be vaccinated with AstraZeneca's coronavirus jab, if offered when her turn to be inoculated arrives.
Yes, I would take the AstraZeneca vaccine. I would like to wait until it's my turn, but I would in any case.
And the German Chancellor also pointed out that she's ready to order the Russian Sputnik V vaccine for the country once it's authorised by the European Union. The government and regions have agreed to work to speed up vaccination in the country, where more than 17,000 cases of the coronavirus were reported in 24 hours, about 5,000 more than a week ago. Germany on Friday resumed use of the Anglo-Swedish AstraZeneca company's jabs, and politicians were at pains to assure the population of the vaccine's safety. Germany had initially limited use of the vaccine to people under 65 years old because of insufficient efficacy data for older people. The European Union has warned that the region is facing a third wave of COVID-19 infections. Spokesperson for the European Commission, Dana Spinant, stressed the need to considerably speed up the rollout of the vaccination programme across the EU and reiterated that the bloc remains committed to the goal of vaccinating 70% of its adult population. The statements came shortly after Germany's health ministry claimed that the region lacked sufficient vaccines to prevent a third wave of COVID-19. The World Health Organization's vaccine safety experts gave renewed backing to AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on Friday, having reviewed reports of blood clotting after immunization.
The committee has concluded that the available data do not suggest any overall increase in clotting conditions following administration of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. As a result, the committee has recommended that the AstraZeneca vaccine's benefits outweigh its risks, with tremendous potential for preventing infections and deaths from COVID-19.
Samia Suluhu Hassan made history on Friday when she was sworn in as Tanzania's first woman president in Dar es Salaam, the country's largest city. The inauguration was witnessed by cabinet members and former presidents of the nation. Hassan's inauguration comes 2 days after she announced the death of President John Magufuli from a heart condition. In her first public address as president, she announced 21 days of mourning for Magufuli and public holidays on March 22nd and 25th, the day the late president will be buried. Now, residents in Dar es Salaam said they were proud to see the country's first woman president sworn in after John Magufuli's sudden death.
The times to view women as weak are long gone. We are able and more than capable because the world will see the progress we will make as a country and the importance of empowering women.
I feel good because I know she is able. The former President Magufuli, who was hardworking, chose her as his vice president because he had seen the qualities that enabled her to be his deputy, and that is why he had her close to him from the beginning. We are certain that she will deliver. She is a hardworking woman who is able to handle that position.
The ongoing tensions between the United States and China were evident in the first high-level talks between the two taking place in Alaska. The talks continued Friday morning, but there were limited hopes for much progress, as the first statements from representatives of the Biden administration as the talks opened on Thursday followed much of the same discourse as the previous Trump administration. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the US would discuss its deep concerns about China's actions in Xinjiang, Hong Kong and Taiwan, as well as cyber attacks on the United States and economic coercion towards its allies. Meanwhile, China's representatives hit back at the baseless claims, with senior foreign policy official Yang Jiechi stressing that Washington uses its military might and financial supremacy to suppress other countries, while inciting some to attack China. And the broad-based talks opened with fireworks on Friday as the top diplomats from both sides berated the other for aggressive actions that were disruptive to global stability. After 3 sessions on Thursday and early Friday, the talks, which came 2 months into the administration of US President Joe Biden, were set up as an exchange of views, and no agreements of pacts were expected. On Friday, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in India for the first face-to-face meetings between New Delhi and the Biden administration, with discussions around China expected to be a focus of the visit. India is a key US ally in the region, and the trip comes after the first talks between Secretary of State Antony Blinken and top Chinese officials in Alaska. Beforehand, Austin and Blinken visited Japan and South Korea, 2 other important US partners in the Asia-Pacific region. During his 2-day visit to New Delhi, the Defence Secretary will meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as well as the Foreign Minister, Defence Minister and National Security Advisor. The global climate strike movement, Fridays for Future, resumed activities on Friday with demonstrations in over 800 cities. The youth-led protests seek to raise awareness regarding climate change and to demand better policies from governments and decision-makers. The movement is beginning to resume its street sit-ins and other demonstrations after turning to social media throughout 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic-related restrictions. Groups in Germany, Spain and the United States called for rallies and marches. Several hundred youth gathered in Paris as part of the Youth for Climate organisation, inspired by environmental activist Greta Thunberg. And environmental activists also rallied in the Philippines in front of the Standard Chartered Bank in the capital, Manila, to demand that the institution stop its funding of coal-fired power plants in the country. A February 2021 study found that 8.7 million people died prematurely across the world due to pollution linked to the burning of fossil fuels, nearly double what was previously estimated. The Philippines has also been battered by frequent typhoons as a result of the high seawater temperature linked to climate change. And Belgian environmental activists also took part in the global climate strike this Friday. Masked and in limited numbers, protesters stressed they want to keep climate change in the spotlight despite the pandemic and lockdown.
I think it's very important that people are still protesting because there's hardly any change in the politics surrounding climate, and I think there should be more. And the fact that people still are here means that it's still an important issue that isn't tackled yet.
I'm happy because I really feel like people are waking up more despite the pandemic. Look at the actions around us, the NGOs. Let's say, collaborate together because we are all concerned. It affects everyone. I believe people are waking up more because they have become more aware of what is essential.
And young climate activists in Pakistan also joined the Global Fridays for Future protests this Friday to demand greater action from political leaders to prevent climate change. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.